I have tried to grow trust quickly.
Mm,
And this has been a huge, again, learning curve. I guess that's kind of the theme for me, is to figure out how I can properly earn trust. Because what I was doing, and again, all the traditional, business development activities, the cold calling, the cold emailing,
yeah.
where you try to say, hey, here's who I am, here's how I'm different, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
It works for a very small amount of people. It didn't feel authentic to me.
Mhm.
So that's why I've tried to shift how I do things. So I think trust is everything.
Dishonesty, disrespectful, discrimination, detached, dismissive. That's it. I'm done. Relationships can be messy. Are you having trouble with your personal or professional relationship? Not to worry. As a relationship therapist and coach for over 25 years, I have a lot to share, and so will my guest experts. Let's get smarter in our business and personal lives so we can be our best selves. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to episode 19 on mixing business with pleasure. So I find the majority, I'm going to be honest with you, I find the majority of my guests through platforms like LinkedIn, at times Instagram, after viewing their profiles. And then after that, probably secondly, through referrals. And thirdly, probably through networking. So h- the way I pick people out is, I try to determine um, or get a sense how passionate they are about their purpose, uh, aka work. But then also trying to gain a strong sense of how important they feel it, it is to blend their home life with their work so that we can sort of, not tip over to one side or another. So here I have Quinton Chambers. He is passionate about simplifying your financial planning and investment management. He focuses on evidence based decisions, clear communication, and meaningful connections. He helps clients ranging from business owners to professionals to high net worth individuals and families achieve financial clarity and success by providing personal advice tailored to their unique goals and challenges. And unique goals and challenges and their struggles. I mean, this is extremely important. Like in this episode, we spoke a lot about, the human behind the desk. Whether that's one of your team members or an employee or your boss or yourself, as an entrepreneur, a business owner. I mean, this is kind of who I focus on interviewing. And I think a lot of people aspire to be entrepreneurs, but the people that are successful entrepreneurs are because they are so passionate about their purpose and their cause, because otherwise, you know what? It's not worth it. You might as well work for somebody because it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And you know, it's also like when I heard, Quentin talk about like their unique situation, for example, like I too like try to incorporate this as much as I can into my work. I mean, obviously everybody that comes through my door has their unique situations. Um, but like even in the coaching that I do, like I mean, I do mention on my website that I follow a game plan of sorts. Um, and that I created this game plan like through my experience of working with many individuals, but I don't suggest in any moment that it's sort of a template of sorts that I just slap on every human being that enrolls in my program. I mean, it's very my approach to their situation or in helping them attain their goal is to customize that in a way that, yeah, as Quinton says, speaks towards their uniqueness, and everybody is incredibly unique. Even though we're all flawed, we are flawed in different ways, and we can be proud of that. So the people that listen to my podcasts, I think are people that are much like me. They're very passionate about their work. They care a lot about their relationships, and they know that they're the type of person that once they get focused in a specific area, they tend to get distracted, which might sound like a bit of you know, paradoxal in nature, right? What do you mean? You just said they get focused and at the same time they're distracted. Yes, because we're so focused in a specific area and what we're doing that we it's easy for us to get off track, like to spend too much time at work and not enough time, at play, taking care of ourselves or our families. So if you're one of these people, continue to listen to this podcast because that's what it's basically all about. So, okay, with that, I want you to meet Quinton Chambers, a financial planner. Okay, enjoy the show. Excuse this brief interruption, but I would be bereft not to share this wonderful opportunity with you. I am now accepting new clients to be coached. Nothing makes me happier than to jump on this podcast with you weekly, but the majority of my time is actually spent creating and customizing one-on-one client experiences. The link to my website explaining what this all looks like will be linked in the show notes, and I invite you to check it out. Now, let's get back to the show. So, Quinton, tell me, what gets you up in the morning?
That's a great question. Yeah. I'm actually in a phase of kind of reiterating my why. I think for so long it was the traditional career success, do well, make lots of money, like everybody tells you you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
As I'm getting older, I'm starting to think more about legacy, and what I want to leave for both what I do within my respective industry, as well as we're trying to have children, so my future children. So yeah, that's a big priority for me, trying to figure out the impact that I want to leave in the world. Yeah, I would say
Mhm.
that's kind of where I'm at right now. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So in the world of investing, like how does a person choose one, wealth management company or institution over another? Like what are some core um yeah, the core just, that helps them with their decision making, core principles or
Yeah, so the core of relationship management, because that's what it is. The people that are buying and choosing stocks as their profession, don't have the ability to give that same kind of detailed relationship. So a lot of good advisors now are using third-party fund managers. So you want to be working with someone who is kind of offloading that so that they can focus on getting to know you and focusing on the financial planning. So that comes back to credentials. Depending on where you are in life, you're going to need different types of advisors. I kind of like to talk about a graduation process. How it works in my industry is normally asset based. So if you have under $250,000, and it goes with complexity, if you have under $250,000, normally it's good to do a DIY, like self-directed investing, or work with your retail branch advisor or independent financial advisor. Obviously, you want to be mindful of fees.
so
Ideally, you're looking. Go
can I
ahead.
ask, so you're saying if you have like 100 to $250,000 to invest, um, you you wanna do a DIY?
Again, if you have the aptitude, just
Okay.
with the proliferation of financial information out there, it's not hard to get good financial information. I
Okay,
actually did a post on this today.
where would one go to get good financial information, like a reliable source? Like I know what you mean though, because I have like a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, and like they're YouTubing everything. And
That's
sometimes
it.
I wonder, is that I mean, they seem to be doing okay, but like does that
Yeah,
make
there's, I mean, a few really good ones that come off the top of my mind. The Money Guys, they're US based, but they
hmm,
teach the fundamentals of finance, which I think are widely applicable. In Canada, there's a team called PWL Capital. So they're actually a competitive investment firm, but I think they just do such a fantastic job. One of their lead portfolio managers, Benjamin Felix, he hosts The Rational Reminder, but he also on YouTube has something called Common Sense Investing, where he
oh,
teaches you the principles of investing, which again, I follow within my practice.
okay. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny you bring up common sense, because I feel like, those are one of the soft skills that seem to be, be sort of become like going into extinction or something like that. Like it's just hard to come by. Okay, so that sounds cool. So okay, so you're saying like younger
So
people, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the fundamentals of finance are pretty simple, right?
Okay.
More money in than money out, right? That
Yeah.
comes with a basic budget. What you do with that money comes back to your short-term and long-term goals. So if you have short-term goals, you make sure that it's not in risky type of investments where you're going to see it go up and down, like a savings account or something like that, so that you can buy your first house and the money's there when you need it. When we're talking about longer-term goals, it's putting it in a place where it can grow. Again, there's more nuance there when we're talking about like your RRSP or your TFSA. But for
Right.
the most part, getting that information and doing that kind of stuff right isn't particularly difficult. You can
Okay.
watch a few really good YouTube videos, or again, just do some basic research. Even all the big banks have, these quick documents that you can read and web pages that you can just check out and get the basic information, and then talk to people in your network. Everybody has financial professionals are a dime a dozen, truly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
getting broad-based advice isn't hard. Getting
Mhm.
good specific advice is kind of where I think the beauty
Mm.
lies in my profession. So that kind of extends it to once you get past that threshold, that's when you're wanting to look for credentials.
Mhm.
CFP, PFP, CIM. So the Chartered Financial Planner, Personal Financial Planner, Chartered Investment Manager, Chartered Financial Analyst. These are all designations that are very well really wide regarded in my profession, and are
Mhm.
really like the gold standard in terms of what it takes to do the job.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what you should be looking for when you are looking for a financial advisor to work with. And then also understanding how they're compensated, because the saying, show me how you're incentivized and I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So now you're saying like over a certain amount, or depending on what your goals are,
Yeah.
like your future, yeah, like looking out more into the future, you have a greater amount of assets now. So then it would be a good time to consult one of the professionals with the credentials that you just mentioned,
Yep.
correct? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I like to say it's a degree of complexity too.
Okay.
Um, for a lot of people, doing the budget, like the basics of finance, isn't particularly hard. But as you start to get into maybe a higher income and you have a more complicated tax situation, or you start in business
Yeah.
ownership, that's when you're going to want to make sure you kind of have that orchestra where everybody's playing the right tune.
Okay. Okay. So, what do you think, like in your role with the banks and being like, okay, first of all, your title is, can you
I'm a
say it?
wealth advisor.
Wealth advisor. Okay, so, um, where do you see yourself, like in most like benefiting people, if you want to?
Yeah. So My clients are primarily high income earners, business owners, people that do have more complex needs. We do a lot of comprehensive tax planning. The investment management side is also another big one because we deal with larger scale assets. And I like to say, like, it's the people that we deal with by proxy of their assets are normally busy. They have a lot going on.
Yeah.
They don't want have to take the time to go through the minutia of their finances. They want someone that they can trust, and that's going to be a big theme that I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
They can work with and know that everything's going to go in proper order, so that it's the benefit of their long-term goals. So that's where, again, wealth advisor, I prefer the term relationship manager,
Mm.
because it's really like making sure that your whole financial picture is integrated. We look at every area, dig up every corner, coordinate with your lawyers, your accountants to make sure that you have this seamless financial plan. So that's kind of the sandbox I play in.
Okay, so what do you mean you coordinate with the lawyers and the accountants? Like, would you actually have, you do you get your clients permission to consult them and talk to them, and generally are these professionals open to having a conversation with you, or how does that work?
If they're worth their stuff, they definitely are. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great professionals. Again, we live in Winnipeg who
Hmm.
know the role of wealth advisors, and I know the role of an accountant. Again, when we talk about like tax planning, for example, I'm not going to do the detailed year over year like tax filings, but I
Hmm.
do long term projections based on your goals, looking
Hmm.
at modeling scenarios to help you understand the impact of your decisions.
Yeah.
So I need to know how your accountant has, especially with like business owners, how
Hmm.
your accountant has structured things so that I can make sure it's reflective in my models. And then we talk with your lawyers to make sure that the legal liability side or your estate planning is all coordinated. And then we come together to have kind of a seamless, again, plan.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Well, that's never happened for me. I've never
That's
had my
so
financial planner reach out to any of my professionals, so that's interesting. And I'm guessing, as a business owner myself, you would advise me on keeping a solopreneurship or corporation and all of those conversations as well.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding again what you're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
kind of where you're at in life, and again, that is that coordinated effort. Because what I think with a lot of service-based professionals, there's kind of the transactional model where it's basically we're setting up the legal documents, we're doing your annual filings,
Yeah.
and that is kind of where I think a lot of value is missed when
Mm-hmm.
you're having a relationship and you understand what someone's trying to achieve over a long period of time, you can
Mm-hmm.
tie those transactional events into a broader plan. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what a lot of people realize, why the wealth advisors are around.
Okay, so yeah, what I'm hearing from you then is sort of like I'm hearing long-term relationships. Like,
Big-
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, is key. Okay, great. So, so then, I mean, I would like normally there's some sort of fee in managed funds like you're talking about. So, what what should we expect? Like, or what's the ranges, or what should we kind of really go for?
great question.
Okay.
Yeah, so the traditional banks, if you walk into your retail bank, their product offering is a mutual fund. A
Okay.
mutual fund has these embedded fees. So it goes to paying the branch employees, it goes to paying the fund managers. It's kind of an all in one. Unfortunately, something I really don't like about my industry is that these aren't properly disclosed to the consumer. They're
Mm,
actually very high. We're talking 2 to 2.5%. And again, on 100 grand, 22,000, 2,500 bucks, that adds up, right?
yeah.
So that's where I said at the beginning, being mindful of fees. But I think for people just starting their investment journey, it's not the worst thing. So when you're dealing with a wealth advisor, it's kind of two part. You deal with the product, and then you pay for the advice. Now that advice is kind of in perpetuity, so it's a yearly. In my case, it's a yearly fee
Mhm.
that's charged quarterly based on the assets that you have with me. So for $1 million, for example, it's normally like 1%.
Okay. Okay.
and then kind
Okay.
of tiered based on how much you have.
Right. Okay. Okay. Good. And like I'm sure like is there a fee discussed if the funds would be pulled out for any reason or um
Yeah, so in terms of like, so fee disclosure is super, super important. And all these conversations happen in advance of a
okay.
relationship. And I
Yeah.
think it's very important to help people understand like what they should be asking, and that's something that I'm trying to do,
Yeah.
within my own professional initiatives. But so pulling money out, there's normally not fees. Like if you transfer from one institution to another,
Mhm.
the fees incur in terms of like selling your investments,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
invest in the market, you want to move from one institution to the next. The world is in a calamity and it's down.
Right.
That's when you want to be mindful, but there's ways to basically just move it from A to B without selling off, basically.
Right. Okay. Okay. You mentioned okay, so there's bank bonds and then there's different kinds of bond. And first of all, like a bond, just to remind people, or is um just like a
I was
safe.
saying bank mutual funds.
Oh, bank mutual funds. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Right. 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 Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, the way I like to say it is like, a mutual fund is an investment product that is just a bunch of stocks held in one fund, essentially. So
Yeah.
a portfolio. Now, those portfolio managers come from all over the place. They can be banks, they can be independent institutions. CPP, for example, technically is a institutional fund that holds individual companies and bonds, which are just basically debt, from different companies and governments. So what advisors provide to their clients are these different types of funds.
Mhm.
Some will give them individual stocks, some will give them a group of these funds. And the structure of it is important. That's where the fee comes from, because
Mhm.
you could be paying this big fancy team in Toronto who is saying they're going to, beat the markets and so on, charging you high fees. Unfortunately, the data shows that you can't do that effectively. So that's why, I mentioned this earlier, the G2 advisors, the generation two advisors are more mindful with low cost index style investing, looking to implement, the great resource of data that the market has to offer.
Okay. So,
Yeah, it's a lot.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, and then there like, and then there with, I mean, you could also ask for index fund, um, like name some index funds
Like the S&P 500, which
yeah,
is like the US, or the TSX,
yeah,
the NASDAQ, which is tech companies.
yeah,
Yeah, you can do that by yourself. You can go through the Wealth Simples,
mhm,
and just invest your money in a tax-free savings or whatever it may be in that.
yeah.
Or you can do it through the bank. But if you do it through the bank, they're normally going to have higher fees to pay for their people and their advice.
Okay, okay. So, um, would you suggest like depending on the person's age, for example, let's you say Gen 1, Gen 2, like is that like an
So,
is do you have an age attached to that or like
I, I actually refer, like, the Gen 1, Gen 2 is a type of advisor.
Oh,
So the
okay.
Gen 1 type of advisor is your, more like stockbroker, where their
Okay.
whole interaction with you is based on selling you the best stocks or funds,
Right.
and there's no added value aside from, I'm going to get you high returns.
Mhm.
Gen 2 are the holistic advisors, where they do that. That needs to be done right, but that's only a piece of the pie. The
Yeah.
other, pieces are the financial planning, the relationship management, especially, given kind of where we are with, social demographics, with
Mhm.
aging population and a lot
Mhm.
of generational wealth being passed down.
Mhm.
I work with a lot of clients that have, children, and they want to make sure that their children are getting all that same advice that they are receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's like the next generation.
Okay. So, I mean, let's say there's a 40 40 45-year-old woman listening right now who really wants to start to take more interest in her wealth. Where should she start? Like, I mean, should like is Wealth Simple a great place to start? Like with these robo advisors, or like what would you suggest?
Yeah, so I always say the best place to start is with yourself. So you need to do a self-assessment. You need to figure out, what do you actually know? If you look at your financial situation, you're like, I don't know what any of this means. You want to talk to a professional.
Mhm.
Now, the easiest thing is like if you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can walk into your local bank branch and you can just ask them to tell you about these things. If you have a checkings account or there, whatever it may be, you can say, hey, this is where I'm at, book an appointment and get an assessment.
Okay.
From there, you can start to build. It's so easy to do research in this day and age.
Mhm.
Um, and as we know through mediums like LinkedIn or even to some extent Instagram and Facebook,
Mhm.
you can find qualified people in your area who are willing to just have a free conversation. It's not going to cost you anything. I do that
Mhm.
all the time to help people know where they're at.
Okay, so why don't you describe a typical day for yourself then?
Great question. So right now, I try to wake up in the morning relatively early. My wife just built a gym, so
Oh,
I'm trying to be there for 4:35 because the first class starts at 6. So I want to get in, get out before everybody starts. And then depending on the day, so my office is actually at the True North building downtown.
okay.
So some days I'm there meeting with my team,
Mhm.
and that's normally for client meetings. And then for days that I'm more so administrative focused or doing research, I'll
Mhm.
do it from home.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I structure my days.
Mhm.
So because I'm meeting with clients at their bequest, I have scheduled follow-ups. We do normally quarterly or semi-annually. So that kind of moves like clockwork. But I'm always taking on new clients. So that happens when it happens,
Mhm.
as well as client requests. People, life changes on the fly. So
Yeah.
I'm always filtering. I try to make myself as available as possible. So a lot of it is just texting,
Yeah.
sending email, making calls. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Okay, sounds good. So, yeah, you have no children yet?
working on it.
Working on it. Okay. Yeah, I
Hopefully
get it.
soon.
Okay. So, how do you harmonize your work with your personal life? I mean, it sounds like your wife is you said she just opened up a gym? She built a
Correct.
gym.
Yeah, so she owns a gym, and then there's two other locations that she runs. She has a huge team. She's been doing this for a long time, so yeah, it's definitely a labor of love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think figuring out how we harmonize our situation is a work in progress.
Yeah.
Every day is different. We've been married for coming on 3 years, and what our life looked like. I actually used to be a retail employee, so I had your traditional 9 to 5 where I would come in, come out, I
Yeah.
would clock out, close my laptop and forget about it.
Yeah.
Now it's not that. I, as work as much there is as time in the day, right? And
Mhm.
she's the same. So figuring out how we get together, we have to be more deliberate.
Yeah.
We try to do a date night a week, but it's also those little moments. So she
Mhm.
gets home, in her late evenings, 10 o'clock. And that's just a time where if we can find half an hour, 45 minutes to truly connect, we have to be so deliberate about it.
Yeah. So are you saying like yeah, like her like it's sporadic for her, like she might have 2 hours in the middle of the day, which is middle of your work day or something like that, but then she's gone again at 5. Like do you get to eat dinner together? Like or like how do you do it?
No, so her day normally starts at around 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And then she'll be at the gym doing coaching classes or working out herself or supporting her team. And then
Yeah.
she has a big middle of the day. So we often work at home together, which is nice. So we
Okay.
can do those little midday check-ins.
Yeah.
She's not the biggest fan of me. Like she's someone who likes deep work.
Yeah.
So for me to come in poker and to say like, "Hey, hope everything's good."
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's like, "Get away from me."
Right,
Uh,
right. Yeah. She's in the
but
flow.
yeah, and in the evenings it's the same thing. She could be gone for 4 or 5 hours at a time. So no, I would say in a lot of days we don't eat together. Our Saturdays and Sundays are pretty quiet. We try to make sure
Okay.
that we're deliberate there. Sundays, especially where we do our meal prep, we try to watch a show together.
Mm.
Um, and communicate kind of what the week ahead is like. I think
Yeah.
for so long we've been in this phase of we're working to get here, and right now we're in the phase of we're working to eventually have a family so that we can start to structure our life that is conducive to have a child. It's
Yeah.
tough because we don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so if I'm listening right, like I mean, you're saying, you're just not trusting that your paths are going to cross during the week. You're making intentional, like you're intentional about making sure you do connect during the week.
Absolutely. We have to be. We know
Yeah.
the type of people we are. We are very passionate about what we do. And by virtue of what we do, we are focused on supporting others throughout,
Hmm.
the majority of our days. So if we're not intentional about staying connected, and again, we're not perfect by any means. There are times where, we're on completely different pages.
Hmm.
But the times that it works well is that we're both focusing on being intentional.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good, like I like what you said about um like everybody's different, right? Like somebody could be like, okay, when I'm working and there's a boundary up, and just because I'm home does not mean that yeah, I'm 100% available. Um even if you don't hear me talking on the phone or in a Zoom meeting, it doesn't mean, so I think it's really, I mean, as somebody who works with relationships a lot, like it's I and people come to me saying, "Oh, it's a problem of communication." And it's not really a problem of communication per se because you can both speak, you both understand the English language. It's more of um I guess like me as in both of you expressing each other's needs around,
Mhm.
you know, a certain area. So, for example, like a good phrase to use is, I feel blank about blank, and this is what I need. So I feel, um, if your wife was like, okay, like he's constantly popping in and going, do you need anything? Can I get you anything? How's your day going? So she would be more like, I need, dedicated work time. Um, oh, I should say, I feel not the interrupted is not the right word, but I
I can
feel
tell you exactly what she says.
okay.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
my boundaries.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
She
yeah.
loves that line.
Okay, yeah, yeah. No, and it's like, and I mean the boundaries things, right? Like I sometimes I really dislike that word boundaries because it just sounds so harsh. But like it's for her, like I would describe it as self-love boundaries.
Yeah,
I want to be a loving partner to you. So therefore I'm going to express how I feel around this certain area in my life, and I'm going to express what I need from you instead. So therefore it doesn't seem like, boundaries, but it's more like expressing my needs to you in a way that you understand them, basically.
that's it.
So, yeah. So how about you? Is there something that you have needed to communicate with her surrounding your work that to her seems quite foreign, or, I don't know why you do it this way, because we all have certain ways of behaving, right? And to us, this way of behaving makes absolute sense. And it's interesting because both people have that perspective. So
Mhm.
sometimes we can feel judged by our partners, and it seems very unfair because this seems normal to me, like this is normal behavior. So have you had to express anything to her to make her better understand your
Yeah,
needs?
so like I was saying, prior to transitioning to private practice, I was an employee. So it was very easy for me to support her, business endeavors in any way possible. And that was always kind of like my badge of honor, where I was like, I'm the supportive partner, where I'm going to cheer you on in anything you
Mm,
need because you're a big dreamer. I'm going to be there for you. And as we transitioned into like, this is my dream, this is my dream job, this is where I want to spend the rest of my life. It's truly so fulfilling to me. But it has been a large learning curve. I went from just having to be good at being a financial planner, helping people, to having to run a business and,
Yeah.
bringing on people and marketing myself and doing all
Mm,
that stuff that before I did not have to do. It takes a large mental load.
yeah.
And she still had that expectation of that same support.
Mm,
I helped build the gym for all intents and purposes while I was doing what I was doing. And as we kind of transition out of that, I made it kind of very clear that this is actually what I need from you now. I need you to support me in figuring all of this out, to leverage the knowledge that you have to build, to have built what you built, so that I can do the same for myself.
yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So you need her support now in the same way that you supported her in building her dream.
That's it.
Um, yeah, yeah. So was that hard for her to accept? Oh, did I mention my gratuity bonus for referring a coaching client to me? To say thank you, I will be sending you $1,000 cash to your account. Yes, you heard me correctly. If this referral signs up for my 12-week one-on-one work, you are rewarded with cold, hard cash. Let it be my virtual version of giving you a big hug. This is how excited I am. Now, let's get back to the show.
I think at times, especially because everything she was going through was relatively new, like this new location has been so much more than anything she's taken on before.
Oh,
And she had a very seamless process. So for her to feel already stretched thin and then say, oh, by the way, I also need this from you because, and I hate saying like the ebb and flow of a relationship. It's not about owing anybody
right.
anything. I ebbed in that way. Now we need to flow in my way.
Yeah.
It's challenging
It
because
it,
I
it
walk on, fine ice, because I don't know if that one request is that one request too many.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I know. It's really that you're right. You're bringing up a point that not very many people bring up, but I know that they're struggling and yet so am I, but I need to express my feelings and my needs. Um And really, we're all responsible for our feelings, right? We're all responsible for our emotions. So, I could take that as, oh, he doesn't really care about me, or he's, ignoring my needs, or I could accept that, this this is sort of like, yeah, like I'm more compassionate towards him. I see that he's struggling and, you know, this is temporary. I always like to remind people, all of our mental anguish is temporary. It's just sort of like it's sort of the dark night of the soul. You're going to come through it. You know that there's light, but you know, and often the word compromise is used, and actually being a Gottman's therapist, compromise is one of their big exercises that they do. But I much prefer, and you'll appreciate this, it being in corporate sort of, it's more, and running a team is more collaboration,
Mhm.
because compromise like sort of insinuates somebody's really giving up something, in order for you to be happy or something like that. Whereas collaboration is okay, I see this is what you need. Let's figure out what we can do together in order to fulfill your needs and fulfill my needs. I love it because it's much more of a problem solving, back and forth. And yeah, no one really that way everybody feels like, they're worthy of each other's like attention, and yeah, they feel
Very
cared.
insightful.
Mhm, mhm. So, keep that in mind the next time, she's complaining that you're never around. Um, but yeah, and really being very deliberate, like you're saying, about, Because I'm telling you, like you're young, and I love the fact like that you're only 2 years into the relationship, and that you're planning a family and all that. And hey, we know that there's a hell of a lot of coordination that comes with that in terms
Mhm.
of cycling. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
It's sort of like, okay, we got the next 24 hours.
that's
Yeah. So anyway, but like, um because it just happens. Like, it happens. Like, you both, it's not your intentions to have the connection between you 2 drop, but unless it's, like, deliberately, intentionally scheduled out. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of scheduling in connection time or whatever that might be, but, like, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. So you mentioned something about like on Sunday nights, or Sunday we do meal prep, which is super
Yep.
important. I'm all about nutrition and what that does to your mind. Um, but that's also a time to catch up, right? And then also like looking at your planners, at your calendars, and also friends. Like, do you feel like you're connecting with your friends as much as you?
That's a tough one.
Mm,
Friends, and again, I think maybe it's the excuse that we give. We're in this period of life. Our best friends had a baby 6 months ago. Our other best friends are pregnant with their first. So
wow.
our traditional friend group, there's six of us, are not as close as we normally would be. We normally would see each other again once, twice a week. So that's changed, and we're learning to evolve there. And then maybe our other closer friends who, aren't in that same stage of life. Their business, my wife's best friend, who's a business owner, she is so invested in what she does, and she is so amazing at what she does. But it's all in there. And
Yeah.
my closest friend, who's a guy who he's the same way. He started his business 2 months ago, and I haven't seen him since.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
You're in a real group of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think we all kind of have pushed each other in that direction throughout kind of our relationship together. I think also it helps that all of our families have kind of had that same background.
Okay. Yeah. 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 And extended families, how do you feel about connecting with them? If like we're talking about relationships, so are you able
Yeah, I
to?
would say that for me, it's been a huge priority. So this year has actually been quite challenging. So my grandmother is a diabetic. She's in her late 90s. She's again the sweetest, strongest soul you'd ever meet, but had to get her leg amputated
Oh,
this year, which was extremely challenging for my dad's side. My mother unfortunately had cancer and had to get her part of her tongue removed, which
oh,
was challenging and scary. So this year for family has been the top priority for
wow.
especially from my side. Whereas my wife's side had moved away to Calgary in the last year. So we're learning how to readjust to those dynamics and what does it mean to connect with them and so on. So I think family for us this year, especially, has been a huge learning curve, and we're trying to figure out how to adjust. But it's been a greater, and I think that's maybe a part why friends have kind of fallen to the wayside
Yeah.
because it has needed us more.
Yeah. Wow.
Tough.
I'm sorry, yeah, Quentin, that is heavy. Wow. But it's just I'm so glad you're expressing that, because it's real life. It's real
Yeah.
life. And that's why, like, listening to your clients and being present for your clients is so important. Like, for me, it's part of my job. It's very easy for me, right? Like, this is what I get paid for. But I think you and anybody else that deals with teams or in corporate or whatever, is it's good to get that reminder, because if someone's slacking off or someone seems distant, it's to remind yourself this is a real human being, at work, but with all this other stuff going on in
Mhm.
their minds, right? And it's good to be reminded of that once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
As business professionals, I find, in my experience, it's far too often where we only think about the business and it's driving numbers and all that kind of. I think that's all well and good. Everybody wants to take care of their families and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, like the most important thing is our humanness, right?
yeah.
The love we have for each other, and I think
Yeah.
that is far too often missed, especially when dealing with professional relationships
Yeah.
in my world. Like that's why I overemphasize this term relationship manager, because I could be the best wealth advisor in the world, but if I don't care about the people that I'm serving, it doesn't matter because they're not going to get the true benefit.
No.
It levels everything up if you can take the time to get to know them, understand who they are, and try to make their lives better, not just their money or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And people see right through that, right? Like that authenticity, like in someone, like like trust, right? Like that's something that
Yeah.
you touched on a little while ago, and that's the difference between, I feel like, trusting your advisor and not trusting your advisor. If you see some sort of facade of a person in front of you, that yeah, once 5 o'clock hits, like, you know hopefully everything will go well in your funds, but like, I'm out of here, sort of thing. Like,
Mhm.
it's yeah. So how do you what's your thoughts on trust?
Yeah, I think so. When I talked about like growing my practice, I have tried to grow trust quickly.
Mm,
And this has been a huge learning curve. I guess that's kind of the theme for me. Is to figure out how I can properly earn trust. Because what I was doing, and again, all the traditional, business development activities, the cold calling, the cold emailing,
yeah.
where you try to say, hey, here's who I am, here's how I'm different, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Um, it works for a very small amount of people. It didn't feel authentic to me.
Mhm.
So that's why I've tried to shift how I do things. So I think trust is everything.
Yeah.
Truly, truly. Um, I think trust comes with trusting yourself first.
Mhm.
I feel like my relationship with myself, and especially the last few years, has developed in a way that I've never thought possible, and greatly due to therapy and working with professionals that can help
Good.
me understand the way that I'm thinking and feeling, and that has paid tremendous dividends to the people that I work with because of this term. And my wife and I talk about it all the time. You can only meet people as deep as you've met yourself.
Mm. That's a good line. I've never heard of that
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah, you're right. Like, you're so right. Like, you can't force trust. It has to be exercised. It's cultivated.
Mhm.
It's like a muscle that needs to be exercised over and over and over again. And just like, let's say you weren't working out and all your muscles atrophied, just the same can happen with trust. If it's broken somehow, it's almost
Mhm.
like you have to go back to square one again, which is really sucks, but it's true. Like, it's hard to rebuild that again, but it's worthwhile. It's what I tell people as well, because not only do you want to be trustworthy, but like, you want to trust others. It's a natural human desire to want to trust, and yeah, and will the good of another. Like, we all want to, you know not only good things come to us, we want good things to come to others as well, and just always keeping that in mind. And I find by doing, helping others, I mean, that's how good comes to us as well. It's funny how that works, like, the more you give out of that, the more you get back. So
That's a
but
big lesson for me because I used to try to take. Hey, I need this from you. Hey, I need this from you, and it never got me anywhere. And I
no.
found how I actually build new relationships now is I try to give people as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll do it all for free. And
Yeah.
then from that, I'll have the trust, and then they'll be like, oh, this is someone that I want to continue working with, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
completely 180 on how I see growing a business. And I actually learned that from my wife.
You will learn that from who?
My wife, that's her
Okay.
business model to a T. She is at heart a true giver. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I've, again, my thick-headedness took me a little while to learn, but I think it's again been a great learning experience.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, so I just want, like, you mentioned therapy. So you've do you mind sharing, like, have you been to Yeah, you have. Okay.
Yeah, so
Great.
I've tried a few different methods.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I
Mm.
found a podcast that I was listening to, and they actually talked a lot about John Gottman, which was
Yeah.
I learned a lot about relationships and whatever.
Mhm.
But from there, it was BetterHelp. So I tried that.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and for a short period of time, I had a good experience, and
Okay.
then turned into a very bad
Oh,
experience.
no.
Yeah,
Sorry to hear that.
it was interesting. It was like, the long story short was, it was therapeutic, and then I turned into the therapist.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it was messy. And then I found someone else here in Winnipeg who is fantastic.
Great.
I think the hard part, and it's a weird thing to say, I went through something with my wife that was similar to something that he went through. And then I think that
Oh,
was just too much for him to deal with. So he
yeah.
kind of like they said, maybe we don't work together anymore. So like I
Yeah.
think I tried with my situation. And so it was unfortunate because I really enjoyed the conversations I had with him, and he helped me
Hmm.
again a lot about myself.
Hmm. Okay. And so were you able to, like, have you tried to find somebody else, or are you just okay for now, or
Yeah. I think everybody could always use someone to talk to in a
Yeah.
professional way.
Yeah.
I think therapists provide such a value to society, that goes beyond just like the traditional, like, let me tell you about how you feel, because it helps you to think differently,
Yeah. Yeah.
to change how you think. And that has been, truly the biggest benefit for me. I don't know. I hope that I keep thinking that someone's going to fall into my lap, right? Where
Yeah.
I'm going to be in the right place at the right time, and then I'm going to find the person that I feel like I could connect with. But who
Well,
knows?
if you keep that thought in the universe, and if that's what you're sort of manifesting, I'm sure that will happen. And but yeah, and I don't feel like people have to, like, oh, if one therapist is not able to continue, oh my god, I need to go find another one, in time. Yeah, that person might fall out of the sky, but also, if it could just be that time in your life that you don't need someone either. I'm not I don't suggest or recommend that people have a therapist on speed dial and always there, like, I mean, um because that may not be healthy either. I don't feel, honestly, like a weekly therapy session for 2 or 3 years, like, which I hear people say is actually a healthy thing. Like, to me, something is off. Like, it's to me, it's sort of, a certain amount of time got you to a different level. Let me try going on my own here, and then set you free. And then, maybe maintenance, like every 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. That's how my clients sort of graduate, and sort of, like, but I don't know, because sometimes I feel like, if it's just a place for validation and not a
Right.
place for growth, then we have to start looking at the situation. And I hope that the therapist would see that as well, like, things aren't really changing. It's been like a year. Um, it seems like you love the validation, but, so anyway, as long as you see the person growing, then I
So
think that's
maybe
healthy.
help me understand from the perspective of, when you see, because I guess for me, I've always gone. I the first time I went to therapy, I had a specific problem I wanted to address. Something about me that I wanted to improve upon. And the second time, I think it was very similar. And maybe why I haven't, and I talk about like action threshold, where I just haven't passed that action threshold of actually doing something about it, because I haven't had something that has caused me to, take that initiative. How do you see it? Should someone say like, I have a problem, I need to go see someone, or should it be, again, like you said, that maintenance approach?
Yeah, I would say if you develop a good relationship with somebody, with a therapist, then I would say, stay in their world. Like, I would say pop in every 3 weeks or so, maybe 4 weeks, whatever. Maybe sometimes it's 5 weeks, but it's sort of just because many of my clients who do that with me, they all say the same thing. I was driving here and I thought, what am I going to speak to Luella about? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, and then there's that, and like so everybody has. I think everybody does need that person on the other side of the room to feel like this is 100% confidential. Like
Mhm.
there is nobody else that I've talked to about this before, and to know that there's no judgment, and to to share that space with, and get some guidance on. Like, I mean, I had a young gentleman, probably similar age of you, in my room yesterday, and I mean, he's told me more than once. I've never told this to anybody before. My wife doesn't know about this, like, I mean, so I think that's really powerful, in many ways. It's a release of some emotional tension that you have in your body. And I think always to be reminded of, you're human, and you're going through this experience, and we're all flawed. Like every single one of us are completely flawed. We're all works in progress, and a work of art at the same time. I always like to say, you're your own special snowflake, and there's something about you that makes you, yeah, extremely unique and special. And yeah, you're far from perfect, but that's none of us are. So yeah, no, I think these are great questions, that you have, that I think a lot of people actually wonder. And I mentioned to this before I hit record too, that especially for men, I find, this is my perspective, could be completely wrong. A lot of men find it difficult asking for help.
Hmm. I
And
know that I'm far too familiar with that.
yeah,
Um, again, my wife, just by proxy of what she does, working with women primarily, women are just always in my sphere.
yeah,
And I think that's forced me to be more emotionally in tune than, a lot of my peers. I'm actually an athlete. I used to play hockey and football. So a lot of my good friends are more of that traditional, we'll call it
yeah,
macho type of guy. And again, especially coming from finance, you can kind of get the
yeah,
type. Um, and again, getting back to that statement of you can only meet people as deep as you've met yourself. I know I can't have the same conversations with them as I can with, some of my wife's friends
yeah,
who,
yeah,
they've done the work, they understand how to see themselves and how to express their emotions. My best friend in the world, I think he is the best person you could ever
mm.
ask for a best friend, but he is emotionally inept.
Oh no.
And there's been so many times where he'll have his relationship problems or whatever it may be, and he'll come to me, and I know I know his language.
Yeah.
So he'll tell me about what he's feeling, and then I kind of have to reiterate it in a way that helps him express his emotions. And I just find it like, if he would do that, go to the therapy, have a conversation, learn how to express your emotions, he would have such a easier time navigating the hard times in relationships.
Yeah. Oh, it's good that you're aware of that, and it's good that you're helping him like that. Yeah. And that's goes back to, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, hopefully he doesn't reach a point where he's having some sort of, breakdown, and then tries to find a therapist, right? Like that's, you know, That's one thing. That's why I said, like, maybe have that therapist sort of on hand that,
Mhm.
because I can't tell you the number of times that I'll get a panic call from mainly men and, like, are you taking new clients? And because something's ultimately happened in their relationship. It's either an affair, often an affair.
Yeah.
But my wife said, "I'm done." That's another very common phrase, and so you don't want to wait till that happens, so yeah. But no, this has been great. I feel like yeah, I love meeting the human behind the financial planner, and I love your discussions about entrepreneurship. I mean, it's so true. It's sort of like a lot of our time is not spent doing what we actually signed up to do, and has,
Mhm.
so much like other business admin stuff, self-marketing and networking and posting, what our message is on social media, platforms. It's just it's crazy. Yeah. So
Yeah. It's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. So thanks so much, Quentin, for
Yeah, my
sharing
pleasure.
everything you did with us today. And I'll put all your links in the show notes, and so people can get a hold of you for the authentic, genuine person that you are. It's very clear. So I love it.
That means the world.
Okay. Okay, everyone else, we'll see you next week. Bye bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember that you can watch the full episode on YouTube, where I plan to hang out the most. Your feedback and suggestions for future guests are incredibly valuable to me, so please don't hesitate to post a comment. You are an integral part of this journey.